I was reading your site around Halloween and noticed Green Man, and instantly knew what the reference was. I had heard this story dozens of times by my dad who visited Raymond. Then, I realized the legend was not correct. The legend states that late at night, you could witness a ghost wandering around the tunnels and bridges around town. There have been numerous reports over the years of a man with a green face walking after hours. He is known as the Green Man. This is because when people have seen this figure, the apparition has a terrifying green face as he floats by the local tunnels and bridges of the area. The real version is extremely depressing, but the real version in the least. The horrible accident occurred in Evans City. Raymond, unsure of the last name, and his older brother were flying a kite near some electrical wires next to a tree. The kite got stuck, and Raymond followed his brother up the tree to retrieve it. When Raymond's brother grabbed the kite, both brothers got electrocuted. Raymond's brother was killed, and Raymond was severely burned. He was extremely disfigured, and it was extremely hard for him to walk because of the accident. The residents of Evans City collected nearly $30,000 for the boy for his care. His older sister and her boyfriend ran off with the money, leaving Raymond without the money he needed to get well. From then on, the townspeople took him under their wing and took care of him the best they could, but without the funds to do it. My dad's grandmother, who lived in Suiki, told my dad and his brothers and sisters the story of the Green Man when they went to visit her. Raymond, now an adult, walks down the road to and from the tunnel every night. The sun would hurt his eyes, since it only had a thin sheath of skin to cover them, so he did not go out in the daylight. He could barely walk, but did so every night regardless. People from all over came to bring him money, gum, and cigarettes, even while he was on his nightly walks to the tunnel and back home. The Green Man came from the color his skin looked when the headlights would hit him. He had been charred so badly, he was gray, so the headlights actually made him look a greenish-gray color. Unfortunately, my dad couldn't confirm this because he is colorblind. Raymond had a hole for a mouth, no nose except for a hole, and holes for ears. My great-grandpa and my Uncle Carl, then a teen, got out and handed Raymond a pack of Lucky Strikes and a pack of gum. Raymond talked to them for a bit, though you could barely understand what Raymond was saying. Behind my great-grandma's car were many more cars, waiting to see Raymond, as there were more every night. At this point, Raymond was a bit of a celebrity. Raymond was watched by the town and the police, and he never had any trouble with the visitors. My family left, and the next car pulled up to visit. My dad recalls hearing of Raymond's passing some years later. It must have been about 1985. The interesting aspect of the story is that years after Raymond's demise, I've had friends who have passed by the tunnels and have noticed gray mists, orbs, and other strange phenomena, where that they witnessed phenomena near the very same tunnels that Raymond used to frequent. One of my friends is a non-believer and a true skeptic of the paranormal, and he had experience where he saw the Green Man years after his death. Just like the story, he shined his headlights as he was driving through the tunnel and nearly wrecked his car. He thought that he had saw a man wandering around who appeared to have a green face. He appeared so quickly that my friend had little time to react. His car came to a complete halt, but there was nobody in sight. Whether Raymond haunts the road and tunnel, I don't know. However, I'd like to believe that the legend is now true after the experiences that my friends have had. A little ironic, but fascinating, nevertheless. These experiences all occurred at my grandmother's house, which is called Gwynne McManor. Although the house isn't very big, it's around 200 years old. All my dad's family have lived there, and my grandmother now lives there alone. There have been many different events, things such as footsteps, dogs barking at something unseen, and the shower being turned on and off, or just a few minor things. One time, my uncle fell asleep in the kitchen at night, and the door he was sleeping next to was flung open, waking him up, even though there was no draft, and it was an airless night. The same uncle also had experiences as a young child. When he was younger, he would hear footsteps from outside his window late at night, as though someone was walking hurriedly over gravel. At the same time, he would see two big black dogs sitting by his bed. Another time, my grandma was walking upstairs with some laundry when she dropped something and bent down to pick it up. As she was retrieving it, she saw a pair of shoes on the steps in front of her, as real as a human's. She looked up and saw a long skirt and the start of a shirt, and then the figure disappeared. My grandma swears to this day that the story is true, and says although she didn't feel threatened, she certainly wonders who this woman is. There was no one else in the house at the time, and the stairs are curved, so if someone had walked down them, you would have seen. Most recently, my sister and I were in the corridor opposite the dining room, which is locked when it's not in use. There is a key on the outside of the door. We were standing there talking when the key started to move, as if someone was trying to get out from inside. We thought maybe someone was in there at first, but then we remembered that the key had been moving from our side of the door. Most recently, we were sitting on the lawn whilst my dad and uncle played badminton on the court behind us. The garden is raised almost on a hilltop, with steps leading up to it, so the grass we were sitting on was in line with the upstairs bedroom window, if that makes sense. We were facing the window, talking, and looking in at my grandmother's two dogs, who could have been sitting on her bed. My grandma had gone out shopping and had left her dog shut in her bedroom. First, we saw one of the dogs start barking urgently at something in the far corner, which was out of sight from us. This continued, and the dog then jumped onto the bed again and started barking directly at us. We thought this was strange, but what happened next couldn't be explained. A white mist, almost in the form of a hand, passed over the dog's head, as though it were stroking her. She then stopped barking. We both looked at each other in horror, knowing that we both had seen the same thing. There was no sunlight that could have reflected through the windows, and I honestly can't think of another explanation for the hand we had seen. I still feel scared when I go into the house. January 1999. I'd been working for an American company in Evesham in the UK. The company was based in a small industrial estate called Briar Close End East. On the edge of this estate is a small pub called the Oddfellow Arms. We all used to go to this pub now and then for a quick pint of a lunchtime. I personally used to have a pint, perhaps once or twice a week there. Anyway, as you go in on a fairly regular basis, you tend to get to know some of the locals. There was one couple in particular that the story is about. They were an old couple. He was an ex-counselor and had to use a frame to walk with. He was always with his wife. She used to drive him everywhere. Obviously, he couldn't get anywhere without her assistance. It was just after the Christmas break, first week back at work in January. I decided to go for a sandwich and a drink at the pub. Funny thing was, I noticed that this chap was on his own, sat in the corner. He tipped his glass to me as usual, to acknowledge me. I thought no more about it. Later that day, I spoke to my warehouse manager. He frequented the pub on a more frequent basis and knew all the regulars by name. So, I mentioned to him how odd it was that the old guy was on his own. Astonished, he replied, "That's impossible. The old guy had died over Christmas." I have never forgotten this, and some people, including my wife, have told me I must be mistaken, but I know what I saw, and I know when I saw him. For all those people who know the Oddfellows Arms Evesham, perhaps some of you may remember this chap and his wife that frequented the pub, or maybe someone else had seen him too. I'm recently going to a neighboring school by this house, and have visited it frequently. I never get a safe feeling while in there, and recently, we found a mutilated animal, not like it was feasted on, but just torn apart, and left in front of the house, maybe for some sort of omen, or a warning. The body was ripped to shreds, and its skin on the hands were ripped off, just showing its appendages. Later, we found the skull of the animal adjacent to it, and we noticed the jaw was removed, but the skull itself was in a very clean fashion. No blood, or guts, or any kind of fluids, not even dirt marks. The skull almost looked like it had been washed. That not being the strangest thing, I have a friend of mine who is a female who is as well as extremely interested in the paranormal, and she has recently gone to the house, and the first encounter dealt with her and her best friend going into the house and just walking around. The problem was that they did not even get to enter into the house. Right before stepping on the yard, the house is surrounded by large bushes. They heard a sound coming from one. Other times that I've been with her, we swore we heard footsteps beside us in the bushes, as if being watched. Her best friend saw a shadow and became very frightened and began to flee. My friend was not as scared and refused, and her being the determined person that she is, continued to go forth. The sound was continuing this whole time. Her friend left sprinting, and so just to be a good friend, she decided to go catch up. She was not running so fast, and in her light jog, she turned around and noticed a woman with bright blonde hair, this being the only thing sticking out, chasing after them, and even got off the yard and continued in the pursuit. When seeing this, my friend began to run even faster and eventually ran to the church where they parked their car. She called me while this was happening, I guess to help us believe, and also she knew I was very interested, and I could hear the fear in her voice. When she returned, she told us the story, and one of the girls who was a local asked about what she had saw, and when she said the thing chasing them had long blonde hair, the local freaked and admitted that the woman who was murdered did in fact have long blonde hair. This scared and excited all of us because my friend who was chased had no idea how the woman looked or anything of that sort. Not being enough for us, we decided to go back with another group of kids who swear they know much about demons. We weren't allowed to go on because the demon group refused to get on because they swore they could just feel the evil. Well, they went back, and we ended up going another day with other friends. We just heard small sounds and footsteps. Other friends' stories deal with the chair in the living room that has two missing legs would be dragged across the living room. But one day, my friend, being the brave girl that she is, went into the house by herself one night, and she was walking around and really did not notice anything. She made a comment expressing how upset she was that nothing was happening, and a few minutes later, she heard a high-pitched shriek, and right then she was pushed, what she guessed to be about 4 feet, and pinned to the wall. She stumbled out of the house, and when she got home, her best friend noticed the scratches on her forehead. She still has them right now. This incident is very recent. That same night, her friend later called me saying that she had fallen asleep and was not responding, and that she was breathing normally, but her body was extremely cold. We haven't gone back yet, but we noticed that activity is much higher when fewer numbers are around. I look forward to giving you updates. Also, I'm from McAllen, Texas, and there's a building in that area that is rumored to be haunted. There's this building, and it is extremely haunted on the 3rd floor. I'll go ahead and check that out as well, and I'll give you an update as soon as possible. My name is Andrew Pierce, and I'm a local ghost hunter here in Warwick, Rhode Island. Having experience in paranormal investigation helps every time I tell my story, because living with ghosts and experiencing ghosts are two different things for me. I moved into my home 15 years ago, at the age of 6. The first night in my new house, I slept in what is now my mother's room, and before waking that night, I had nightmares of bloody murder, massacres, and deadly beatings. At the time I was just scared, but now, after researching, I've come to the conclusion that this was a ghostly encounter. Between the ages of 7 and 10, I suffered 4 experiences in my dreams where strange people would walk around in my house. The only problem is that they weren't living, and in each of these dreams, they were foreshadowings of what are now actual hauntings. The area with the most activity is my basement, which has been finished and where several phenomena have occurred. The first came when I was 12. I was headed upstairs from my computer room when I saw a figure out of the corner of my eye. When I turned around, it was a little girl huddled in a corner and looking at me. She was dressed in 18th century garb and looked like she had just left church or some sort of social gathering. She has never been seen again, but she has been felt throughout the house, and even experienced once by someone who had never been in my house before. This occurred when a friend of mine was sleeping downstairs, waiting for us to get back from a run to CVS. She was asleep on the couch when a ghostly arm or hand touched her arm, and then proceeded to knock over a couple of items on the table. When she had informed me of this, I knew it was the girl. Another haunting would be in my mother's room, where, if you are alone upstairs and my dog is not around, a growling sound comes from her room. It is entirely inexplicable, but I have a feeling an angry ghost lives in there, but cannot gather enough energy to support anything other than making sounds and haunting dreams. Shortly after my neighbor died, he built the house for his children and loved my family very much. Most of the hauntings disappeared, and a sense of comfortability ran through the house. Everything was at normal temperature, and there was no more dreaded sense of being followed or even watched. This has comforted me greatly, but it only lasted for a short time. Since that time, several newer and less aggressive ghosts have entered the house, and they are seemingly very friendly with my dog. Where he used to bark at them, he is now okay with them and can even be seen playing with them. This was witnessed when I saw him playing with his ball alone, but then noticed that the ball was rolling to him on its own. He would bring it back, and it would only roll once more. Also, this same ghost apparently hates breakfast because it disturbed us one time by knocking over a bunch of papers on the counter and spinning the trash can lid violently. No explainable cause was determined, as it was the middle of winter and no windows were open, and we don't have a fan in our kitchen area. Another ghost prefers to walk around the foyer and up and down the stairs, but never seems to go past the hallways. That's really all that happens, but I wanted to report these since they are the only real, vivid ghost experiences I could ever recall. Thank you. We bought a house in Yuca Valley in 1988, built during World War II, from what we were told, 2 bomb shelters. House added on to the years to come. Interesting old place, but nothing special other than the fact we thought we could turn it into our dream house. 2-story, white picket fence, etc. A couple weeks after moving in, my husband and I were in the kitchen, talking, when I thought I saw something. A fog, an image of a lady going through the dining room, not saying a word, thinking my husband would think I was nuts. He said to me, "Did you see that?" My husband and I choose to sleep in the downstairs bedroom, and the girls upstairs at that point. We were in a king-size waterbed, framed firmly on the floor, so it's not logically possible for something to be placed underneath it. After we began renovating the upstairs, we moved our bed up there, and the girls had the downstairs to sleep. Full-size beds, sitting on regular bed frames. There was nothing on the floor when we moved our bed out. A few weeks later, one of my daughters informed us that something was under her bed. My husband investigated and found a black and white photo, as well as some silk scarves. We called the former owner to ask if he knew who or what it might be. He came to look, said the photo was of his dead wife, and the scarves had belonged to her. A few months later, my husband found a painted portrait of a young man in his workshop. Again, called the former owner. He said it was of his dead son. A year or so later, one of my daughters saw the same image, the fog, image of a lady. He or she never caused us any harm, except for the fact that money we hid in one place or another had disappeared. After living there a while, we met the neighbors. They informed us former owner's wife had died from cancer in the bedroom photo, and scarves were found. His son, portrait found, had offed himself at the Yuca Valley Inn. Ashes had been spread on the property, according to them, the neighbors, but these facts were not disclosed to us at the time that we bought the house. After living there some 19 to 20 years, we decided to move, not because of spirits, just now that the kids have grown up and moved out on their own and wanted to downsize. Hey, Phantoms! So, of course, first of all, I wanted to thank you guys so much for allowing me to be your narrator. I know it's a really bumpy ride most of the time, or maybe I'm assuming, anyway guys, but I'm just really elated to get another video out to you guys because I love you guys, and obviously that's all I really need to say to express my love for you, because that's usually what people say when they love each other. I'm just gonna go Wait, what did I? Never mind. I'm not even editing this out. Anyway, guys, please in the comments section below, let me know which stories you like the most. Let me know how you're feeling. Just let me know anything. Just say anything in the comments section below, and I'd really appreciate it. Helps the algorithm, of course. Share, 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 because sharing is caring. And I'm really not just saying that because I want you guys to share. I'm saying that because the algorithm really, really hates me, and I don't think it's ever going to be able to get going in the internet, or on the internet, or on YouTube. You guys know what I mean. Okay, I'm just gonna stop talking right now, maybe. Anyway, guys, share the video, like the video, comment below, just let me know, and enjoy this video. Well, you already ended the video, so at this point, you're not listening anymore. But anyway, guys, love you, and I'll see you in the next video.